You guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you, although this is a little more exciting than the average moon update, as we have a very powerful total lunar eclipse coming up here on Tuesday, November 8th. Now, to be clear here, anytime we have a lunar eclipse, we have to be having a full moon. Okay, but obviously we have a full moon every month. What makes a lunar eclipse unique to the average full moon is it means the sun and the moon are right next to the north and south node. Now, this is a very dynamic transit, so follow along as best as you can. I'm going to kind of compartmentalize it for you guys and try to wrap it all together at the end so that you understand the energies and how to work with them through this eclipse. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a full moon. This is in the sign of Taurus, 16 degrees Taurus. That full moon peaks at 3:08 a.m. Pacific time. Now, because this is a full moon, this is still the peak of a growth cycle that began approximately 6 months ago when we had a new moon in the sign of Taurus. That was actually a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. Now, over these 6 months, we've all been experiencing this opportunity for growth that's related to the sign of Taurus. And I'm going to break down the sign of Taurus for you in a moment here. But something I want to mention first is that I completely understand it's been very difficult for us to really tap into this Taurus energy right now, as the sign of Taurus has been receiving some very radical changes, specifically throughout this year, most significantly since March. Very interesting energy going on with the sign of Taurus. But this is still a time to think about, how have you grown in the ways that are related to this energy? Okay, so the sign of Taurus, this is the fixed earth sign. When I say fixed, what I mean is that this is a very stable energy. The fixed signs want to do things in a steadfast way with consistency and persistency. Now, because it's an earth sign, that really grounds it out. The sign of Taurus in and of itself is said to be the most calm and patient sign of the zodiac, the sign that's, most tapped into earth energy. Okay, but again, there's been Uranus is going through Taurus. I'm going to go through that in a minute, but this poor sign of Taurus, if you're a Taurus, you're thinking, what the heck? I haven't been grounded. That's because there's so much going on up in the sky that has to do with the sign of Taurus. Regardless, maybe you've been able to stabilize yourself over this year. Maybe this is a time to honor that growth. Also, the sign of Taurus, it's ruled by Venus. And believe it or not, Venus actually has a huge influence on our monetary flow, our currency, the flow of our currency. This is actually the sign of money, possessions, and values. People say that have their sun in Taurus, as long as it's not super challenged in their natal chart, these people with Taurus energy can be really good at working hard to obtain the financial flow and to obtain the material possessions. This is the energy that understands the value of material possessions. We are living this physical experience here, and some material possessions can make our life flow with a little more ease and grace. And this energy of the sign of Taurus really understands that. Okay, so how have you grown in these ways? Now, not only that, but the sign of Taurus, because it's ruled by Venus, it's actually a very sensual energy. I love I always say this, I always love hugs from the sign of Taurus, because I don't have any earth in my chart. So when I hug somebody who's got a good grounded energy, it's like, oh, thank God. It's just a relief to me. It's a nice, stable, but grounded and huggy type of energy. Okay, maybe you've grown in those ways as well. This energy is also very much associated with our agricultural systems. It's represented by the bull, cows. Okay, it's very much associated with our farm animals. In fact, when we had the solar eclipse in Taurus earlier this year, all of a sudden there was all these articles coming out of that somebody had found, or people had discovered something like 20,000 dead cows. And interestingly, I actually have a book, an excellent book, if you want to read about this stuff, by Judith Hill. It's called Eclipses in You. And she very specifically breaks down, when we're having any kind of an eclipse in the sign of Taurus, keep a close eye on your farm animals, because there's some really interesting energy that goes on with eclipses. Okay. Now, also, when we think about our agricultural systems, what's going on there? Everything's getting genetically modified, and, Bill Gates is buying up all these, farmlands and all kinds of very weird stuff going on with our agricultural systems. A lot of that has to do with what's going on currently in the sign of Taurus. But how have you grown in these ways? I have personally taken on a huge amount of responsibilities with growing my own food. That's become very, very important to me. So that's just one example here. That's something I will be honoring my growth with, that experience. Okay, so hopefully I'm making sense here. Now, also take into consideration that we all experience this as a collective. Everyone on Earth is experiencing this full moon total lunar eclipse at 16 degrees Taurus, but it's also very, very unique to each and every one of us. And so much of this depends on where the sign of Taurus comes through your natal chart. Which house in your natal chart does the sign of Taurus rule? And if you're using Placidus, you need to see specifically where 16 degrees Taurus comes through. When I'm talking about the houses, I'm talking about the areas of your life. This could be coming through the area of your life that rules over your career, your money, your home, your karma, your health, your transformational processes, higher learning. And that's why it's so great to get familiar with your natal chart. And if you get a reading with me, you get the video recording. So you can always go back to see where any of these new moons, full moons, eclipses, or anything prominent that's astrological, you can see which area of your life it's manifesting through. Okay. And if you want to schedule a reading, erinwageastrology.com. You'd schedule straight through my website. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart and show you guys what's going on, because this is there's so much more to this energy. I mean, it really is a very radical transit. Okay. So for those of you who are new to my recordings, I work with geocentric Western astrology. With that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. Okay. So here we are in the middle. This is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this full moon total lunar eclipse. Okay. Again, this is 3:08 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, November 8th. Okay, so let's start by looking at the moon. This right here is the moon, okay? All these little symbols, technically called glyphs, on the outer part of the wheel here, those are these celestial bodies, okay? Like here's Uranus, here's the moon, this is the north node, this is Chiron, right here is Jupiter. When we go in the wheel a little way, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that these things will be beaming onto us, onto Earth, at the time of this lunar eclipse. Okay, so back up here to the moon. Now, anytime we have a full moon, it's very, very powerful energy. And part of that is because every time we have a full moon, the moon is opposite the sun. If you can follow my mouse, here's the sun, here's the moon. They're opposite each other every time we have a full moon. And that's part of the intensity that we receive from full moons, is that very strong polarity going on between the sun and the moon. It's very intense energy. Generally speaking, when the moon is in the sign of Taurus, it's a very grounded and stable energy. It's a lovely energy. In fact, it's an exalted placement. This is where the moon loves to be, because the moon rules our emotions and our intuition. And the sign of Taurus in and of itself is very grounded and practical. So the moon loves to be here. She's like, oh, this is, a calming area. However, first of all, this right here is the north node. Okay. Now the north node, we call this the dragon's head. Okay. This is where celestial energy comes into Earth. Opposite the north node over here is the south node. The north and south node are always opposite each other. Okay. So the north node, where celestial energy comes in, the dragon's head, also referred to as Rahu. Okay. Because it's right next to the moon, we receive that moon, the north node, again, where energy comes in, being right next to this full moon, that we receive an abundance of lunar energy. This is why I'm talking about anytime we have a lunar eclipse, it means the sun and the moon are opposite each other, and the north and south node are right next to the sun and the moon. And wherever the north node is, right here, whatever it's next to, we're going to receive an abundance of that energy, because they're blending together and feeding us, okay? Feeding us that celestial energy. Now, also, this right here is Uranus, okay? Right, it's 16 degrees. It's basically exactly conjunct the moon. So Uranus is debilitated in the sign of Taurus. Uranus has been going through the sign of Taurus for quite some time. It's a slow moving celestial body. This is not something that happens overnight. Okay. But we're slowly receiving this Uranus energy being modified into this Taurus energy. Now, Uranus, I call this a debilitated placement because Uranus is spasmodic, electrical. It rules extremes. Uranus is what will throw riots on the street. And I want to concern anybody. I'm not suggesting there's going to be riots on the street on the night of this full moon, but that's the kind of energy that we receive from Uranus. It's abrupt. Not only that, but it rules over technology. It rules over digital stuff. It rules over electricity. Okay. And here's the sign of Taurus, which wants to be grounded and stable. And Uranus is zapping the heck out of this sign of Taurus. And not only that, but because this is right next to the moon, this energy is blended in. We're receiving an abundance of this North Node, lunar and Uranus energy hitting through the sign that wants to be calm and stable. So it's pretty bizarre energy. I really, really, really discourage people from being outside having some sort of a moon ritual in the hours surrounding this transit. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't go outside. I mean, if you're in the Pacific time zone, hopefully you'll be sleeping at 3:08 a.m. But regardless, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what time this takes place in your location, if you can avoid fully exposing yourself to these celestial energies at the time of this eclipse, it's my recommendation based off of years of studying this stuff and experimenting with this stuff and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, one more thing to mention here, Uranus is going to be in retrograde. So this little symbol is right here. Now, when Uranus is in retrograde, his energy is even more spasmodic. It's really extreme. Okay. And not only that, but I also do highly recommend that we all stay as grounded as possible in the days surrounding this transit because of this Uranus energy. I'll actually mention some stones that I recommend utilizing in the days or even, especially the hours surrounding this transit. Okay, now also over here again is the sun. Again, the sun and the moon are always opposite for full moons. Now, right next to the sun is Mercury. Now, Mercury rules our conscious awareness. Mercury has a huge influence on our mental function. Going through the sign of Scorpio right next to the sun. This is a lot of brain activity. It could be really good if you're somebody who likes to research, if you like to dive deep into things like occult studies. Going through the sign of Scorpio, this totally supports that. That's really good for that. However, it's also a busy mind, a very, very busy and intense sign. The sign of Scorpio has a lot to do with intensities. And here's the ruler of our mind. I mean, I'm just summarizing this for you. The ruler of our mind right next to the sun, which has a huge influence on our heart, going through the most intense sign of the zodiac, opposing Uranus and the moon, and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, this right here is Venus, which is also very close to the sun. Venus, poor thing, is struggling right now. Venus is the influencer of love and relationships. Again, she also has an influence on the flow of our monetary systems. Okay. She struggles in and of herself in the sign of Scorpio because Scorpio is so intense and Venus just wants to be lovely and soft. And she's like this remedy type of energy. And the sign of Scorpio, she's like, whoa, this is super intense. And not only that, but Venus does not like to be this close to the sun. This definitely could be having some very, very interesting influences on relationships. Keep that in mind. Again, so much of this depends on your own natal chart. That's it. It's so incredibly important, or at least beneficial, to understand what area of your life this is coming through. Okay, now here's the South Node. Again, that's where celestial energy goes out. All of these guys together, this is just, this is wild energy. This is intense and wild energy. Okay, now you can see there's like these red triangles going through the middle of the chart right here. This is like an abundance of T-squares, okay? Very, very intense and prominent energy. This right here is Saturn, okay? That's what these lines are, these triangles, is basically all these guys, the moon, Uranus, and the North Node, making a square. This red line that goes from here to here is one square, and that can create tension in and of itself. And then here's these other red lines going over here. These are more squares, creating more tension. And then these guys are all opposing each other. Basically, this is a combination of the most challenging aspects we could possibly have. I'm putting a little bit of an exaggeration on this, but it really is true. This is very, very powerful energy. Now, this T square, basically going over to Saturn. Saturn is no fun. Saturn is the one who creates discipline and responsibilities. He's an important character for sure, because he's what makes us learn these hard lessons. He's kind of actually the ruler of like our tit for tat karma. And he wants us to learn the hardships. He wants us to learn the responsibilities. He wants us to work hard. Okay. And here's these, already super intense energies going on between the sun and the moon and all these other things, and making this, it's like they're having a conversation with Saturn over here. And the conversation is, no, we have to slow down. We can't, everything has to be super, again, disciplined. And not only that, but the big one here is Saturn over here squaring Uranus. That's a big deal. That's been going on for quite some time. And I think it's going on all the way till March. Uranus, this spasmodic electrical energy, the ultimate goal of Uranus is freedom. That's what Uranus wants. Uranus wants freedom. And isn't it great that he's going through the sign that rules over money? I get it. There's very few people who are living in a state of financial freedom, but that's what Uranus is trying to influence. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Write this down in your journal. My goodness. It's like rule number 1 for manifesting your dreams into reality: financial freedom. But here's Uranus trying to influence major changes to the monetary system. And here's Saturn, who's like the old man, the old grumpy man that is stuck in the old ways of living, saying, no, we're not going to have these changes. And I do feel like that has a lot to do with what's been going on with, cryptocurrencies. We're doing so great for a little while, and then all of a sudden there was this weird crash. I really do feel like we're going into a time where digital currencies are inevitable, but there's this harsh square going on. That's almost like a blockage. It's almost like it's creating some sort of blockage. That's, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. We're all receiving that as a collective, but overall, this is a lot of people, I feel like, will be feeling a lot of internal tension regarding all these pretty harsh aspects that are going on. Now, let's see here. I guess I'll mention real quick, Gemini, Mars going through Gemini. This is another thing that's going on until March. Mars, it rules our physical drive. Mars wants us to move forward. He's the penetrator. He's the one who makes us do what we got to do. Going through the sign of Gemini, Gemini is the sign of duality. Gemini is the twins, and it can have this tendency to kind of want to do two things at once and kind of bounce around. It's a super fun energy. It's a very playful energy and an excitable energy. People who have their Mars in Gemini in their natal chart can be very fun and exciting people. But Mars really kind of struggles here, okay? And keep that in mind. It's like, if you're on a goal, you're on a mission to achieve something, and there's these things that are kind of like, oh, do I go this way? Do I go that way? We're receiving that energy. And it's so important that we just stay so focused on the direction we really want to go in. By the way, an astrology reading can really help with that too. Okay. Now we've also got some lovely spiritual energies here. On a lighter note, we've got Jupiter, who will have just retrograded back into Pisces. Jupiter was in Aries for a while. Now he's moving back into Pisces for a bit. And Jupiter really enjoys being in the sign of Pisces. He's one of Pisces rulers. Yes, he's in retrograde, but okay. So Pisces is the mystic. Pisces is the spiritual one. And Jupiter being Pisces ruler, Jupiter is part of the one who makes Pisces this sort of flowy spiritual energy that can be kind of faith-based, that sort of thing. And this is lovely for people who are tapping into their spiritual journey. This can support that. Be careful of delusions though. This right here, right next to Jupiter, is Neptune going through Pisces. Now, Neptune is also Pisces ruler. Just to be clear here, the sign of Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. And now Jupiter and Neptune are both going through the sign of Pisces. And again, this is a spiritual energy. Neptune has a lot to do with altered states of consciousness, but this Neptune going through Pisces is very It's tricky in the sense that it's so magical and so mystical and unearthly that it can have this strong a tendency to have people be deluded. Okay, so be very mindful of that, extremely mindful of that. Again, keep focused on your goals and the journey, the direction you want to go in. That's one. I'm going to leave you on this note as far as we've got this chart pull up. It's of course important that we always stay focused on our goals. That's of course that's the number one key to move forward and obtain your highest purpose here. But especially when we're having eclipses. And the reason I say that, obviously the sun and the moon are the brightest lights in the sky. And here's the rulers of their, the journey of our soul, the north and the south node, and they're right next to the brightest lights in the sky. This is so important. This is where things get tricky. The north and south node, they are again, the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, and they're ferocious. They're actually, the north and south node are considered enemies of the sun. Now, if you're still with me, hopefully I didn't lose you. There's a wonderful Hindu legend behind all this, but really what it all comes down to is they really have an immense amount of influence on us. The north and south node do when they're next to the sun and moon. Overall, it's just crucially important that we are not causing harm to anybody, especially ourselves. I think most people, if they're causing harm, it's usually to their self. It's so important that we refrain from any sort of harm to ourselves and also any soul around us, or even creatures around us, as most significantly when we are having an eclipse. Okay, I think I said all the things that I felt were most important. Now I'm going to talk about parts of the body that are really going to become sensitized in the time of this eclipse. Taurus rules basically this whole part of the body. Rules the ears, rules the throat, rules the lower jaw, and it also has a huge influence on the thyroid. Now, because, anytime the moon transits through the sign of Taurus, which she does every single month, but when we're having a total lunar eclipse, meaning a full moon next to this north node, that area of our body can definitely become more sensitive. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's a really good idea that we pay a little extra attention to this part of our body. I will be utilizing cleavers. Cleavers can really kind of help decongest and take some pressure away this part of the body. They're good for many other things, but that's what I will be using. And also, I like to use iodine to keep my thyroid healthy and happy. However, that's, I'm not a doctor here. I do recommend that you check in with your healthcare professional. Okay, so some stones to mention here. This right here is rose quartz, which is all the stones I mentioned here today. All resonate with the sign of Taurus. I will also leave a full extensive list of stones in the description of this video that resonate specifically well with the sign of Taurus. But these stones that I'm mentioning here today are really stones that are like old, reliable, good for everybody, because not all stones are good for every body. In astrology reading with me, I can, tell you which stones you may want to refrain from wearing and tell you which stones which would be best for you to wear. But stones like rose quartz are lovely for everybody, a very calming stone, a very soothing stone. And as I mentioned, the stuff that can be going on with relationships, rose quartz can be really good for that. Okay. Now, rose quartz is one that I feel confident in saying that you're safe to keep a piece of rose quartz near you. What I always do is I take these stones and I put them on top of my journal. After I write down in my journal the growth that I'm grateful for that I've experienced in this full moon, I also write down what I'm ready to let go of. As soon as this moon starts to wane, as soon as it peaks at 3:08 a.m., at 3:09, the moon starts to wane. Then it's in the natural flow of things to let go of what's not serving us. Okay. So I write that down in my journal and I put these stones on top of it. Now, also, kyanite, one of my favorite stones. If you've been watching my videos for a while, I'm sure you've seen this. It's such a beautiful stone. There's also black kyanite here too. Very, very protective stones, extremely. And not only that, they very specifically resonate well with the sign of Taurus. Kyanite is another one that I feel like is safe for everybody to wear. A really beautiful and lovely and protective stone. Okay, now not only that, but on that note, the rose quartz can work as an amplifier for amplifying the spells that I am casting. When I'm spelling things out in my journal, that's what we're doing. We're casting spells. The rose quartz can amplify those words, okay? And the kyanite can help protect from the unwanted energies. Okay, I hope I'm making sense here. Now, also, because I mentioned this Uranus energy is so close to the moon, and Uranus rules over really electromagnetic fields, okay? Dangerous EMF. A lot of that has to do with Uranus energy, okay? And Uranus is very, very powerful at the time of this eclipse. So my number one recommendation to keep ourselves protected from the weird electromagnetic fields is shungite, okay? This is what I've been kind of keeping shungite all around me throughout this year because Uranus has been pretty close to the North Node, and I realize we're receiving a lot of kind of bizarre energies. So shungite would be my number one suggestion there. Again, I'll leave a full extensive list. Just look in the description section. Okay, I hope I made sense of this. I know that was a lot of information to process. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please head over to my website, erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. If you're on a phone or a tablet, there's a menu bar on the top right-hand side. There's 3 little lines. You click there, then it's super self-explanatory. It'll say book online, and it's an easy process from there. Okay, guys, I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.